children, most of us, and most of our children may not meet the kind of caliber that is expected of us because they should come to our level and even go beyond. This is not supposed to be with what we are supposed to be discussing today. But I'm saying this because of you, Ndugu Nyangweso. You are a grandson or a son of a great man, and to see you a panelist here makes me proud. It makes me proud that you are able to make your family, make Uganda proud. I'm a very keen follower of what happens here in UBC. So I wanted to start from that level. And also, yesterday I emphasized to the parents that I think it is important for us to know how to balance work and management of our families so that we can raise children. Like now, the whole deputy ED of KCCA should raise a man who should be in charge of the continent, not anything below that, something like that. So having said that, the privilege I have is to be again in this national broadcaster. I have come here not to defend anything, but to just shed and shine light to some of the things that the citizens will want clarification on. We, as a government, have one very important task to perform, to deliver services to the citizens. That is the cardinal responsibility of the state. And once we were elected, first of all, we were elected on the promises and commitments we made to the citizens. And we listed those commitments. If you people elect us, this is what we will do, this is what we will do, this is what we do, in our manifesto. And the population based their decision on what they saw. This is a brilliant manifesto, so you NRM, go and serve us. And that's why we are here. So it's our responsibility to make sure that the commitments we made to the citizens are delivered, because the citizens will take us to task. So when we came to leadership now from 2021, we are also guided particularly in delivering services by what we call the National Development Plan. And for this case now, National Development Plan 3. And the National Development Plan 3 is a framework which guides us that you people, as you are moving, move this direction. This is how you, if you do this, this should be measured like this, your achievements will be measured like this, and this is what you will deliver to the country if you achieve this. So we came with that. The manifesto is there of HED President and NRM, then the National Development Plan 3, and then there are some commitments that the global community has also set as standards that we must really say by this time, if we want to be there, we should be able to accomplish this, we should be able to accomplish this. So we saw that, and then as government we reflected and said, how have we been performing? So we realized that we have been performing fairly well, but I think not well enough. And that's why you saw our approaches have been sector-wide approaches to how we intervene. For example, the Minister of Works would be doing its own things and keeping all its plans close to its chest. The same would be the Minister of Agriculture, the Minister of Land. So there is a new shift now from sector-wide approach to planning to now what we call to program approach. That's why now I am privileged to lead this team here. This team, these are members of a program that we now call ITIS. That is Integrated Transport Infrastructure and Services Program. This is a program that is domiciled in the Ministry of Works and Transport in terms of its secretariat and leadership. But it brings on board now, that's why you get Engineer Luimbazi, under KCCA for supervision, but the planning together with us. These are, we program, the program approach to management of what we want to deliver to the country presupposes that those of us who have common programs, we are going to do roads, for example, we are going to do water, we must plan together. Nobody now can keep the plans that he or she is supposed to execute close to his chest. Even if it attracts so much money, that money must be something, a product of a collective planning. So that's why you see me, as a minister responsible for roads, sometimes going to drive like this, the Right Honorable Speaker did in the city. You find me drive on Sundays, and I didn't want to say this so that some of the people who don't like me will now say on Sundays it's very easy to get the guy. but but on Sundays I drive, sometimes when I'm in Kampala, I drive sometimes incognito to go and see firsthand what's happening. So I call Engineer Lwimbaza and say, I am in Mulago, and I have seen your people cut the road that they are trying to define how to fill a pothole. And I'm told they cut it 2 weeks ago. But it is still on up to now. Why did you do this? Can you, then, the people I get on the site say, it's true, we cut it, but we intend to do it, but resources, why did you cut it if you are not very sure of the resources? My mothers from Mulago are going to be driven through this place to Kamocha or wherever they are, and they are going to go through this an artificial creation. So we sometimes have had our own challenges there, but the engineer will tell me, okay, the team is coming, or the team we did not. So there are challenges within us and our agencies sometimes, but not that we are completely, also innocent, we the supervisors, because we ought to know this sometimes. We ought to know this and be able to appreciate and guide them on what should be done. Now, coming back to what you've asked, today zeroing on KCCA. KCCA, I want to assure the country that we are going to build the roads back better. The picture that has been projected is that it is a hopeless case. I want to make it abundantly clear to Ugandans that KCCA is the face of Uganda. The situation right now is bad, but it will never become hopeless. What makes me to have this confidence? One, and also I want to make it very clear, Timothy, to the country. Let our citizens not think that it is because of NAM and the visitors that are coming that we have decided now to really build the city back to where it was. There are some of the programs that we had already come up with, but now NAM has only accelerated it. We decided to bring some of them forward because we are going to have a number of visitors, guests in this country, bigger than what we have ever witnessed before. And guests who are not just coming for nyege nyege, they are coming for serious discussions. They are not just coming. If it was nyege nyege, I would not be involved, because those ones could be hosted anywhere. But we are talking about NAM, we are talking about serious heads of state and government in their big numbers coming to Uganda for the first time, to come and discuss global affairs. So we decided to bring forward some of the things that were supposed to be in the pipeline, and when we saw that the pipeline was too long, we decided to say, now let's bring them closer. The case in point, for example, if you asked me, Mr. Churu, what is it that you are talking about? If I took you, Timothy, to where we walked the president the other day, right here in the clock tower, what Ugandans are going to see when we unveil that, it's not something that used to be there. That place has been a nuisance in terms of flooding. It has been flooding. It is addressed now. There are a few areas which Engineer Lwimbaza will clarify to the country. My engineers, the technical teams that are there, are telling me we have fixed this. But when you come from Usafi market, there are some challenges that may still present a problem to this spot that we have fixed. So we need to address it even from that source there. And we have given an engineer to work with my teams to make sure that we address that. So all that will go all the way up to Munyonyo and some other areas where we walked actually the president the other day, showing the president what we are doing. And also, as really head of state, it was okay for him to come and do support supervision on all of us now. And that's what made me to know. And I'm very convinced that the time is limited. We are going to host this guest by January. But so we are running against time to make sure that we deliver. You heard me make a commitment to actually the president that we are in some parts about 98% ready. And some areas we may not have reached that percentage yet, but we are coming. So that is what is happening there. The same applies to the airport. The same applies to some of the streets in Kampala. That may not even be used by the guests, but we think they are extremely critical. So I asked a question that I want to repeat here to Engineer Luimbas. I asked a question now to one of his engineers. I said, engineer, when all is said and done, we are going to do some of these culverts, we are going to fix this. God forbid, if it rains on the day when the NAM is happening, are we going to have a flood in Kampala, especially on the roads that we are going to have our visitors play? The engineer and his team repeated, even before HD president, that it will not happen. So we are doing everything possible to make sure that our guests will see a beautiful city. It will be moved in a place which is conducive. But there are, of course, a number of areas that I will be telling you. When you stand on that new pedestrian walkway that we have created at the clock tower, and you face the city is looking rusty. So we are saying we want the place painted so that it really reflects it. Because even in our traditional African setting, I know professors here will agree with me, sometimes at home, there are a few things that you can fix very well and differently when you hear that a minister is visiting. You know, you may have been clean, you may have been organized, but now Minister Chweru is coming to dine with us. You may be forced to sort out a few things. So why don't we take advantage of this high-profile kind of visitors coming to our country and fix our city so that it's a livable city, it is a city which is beautiful, and a city that people will always love to come to. We are very hospitable, but that has just been a missing link. And so that's what's happening.
I'll come back to things like policy, the law, and funding that are there. But let me get to Engineer Kizito here. Engineer, looking at UNRA, you have a plan of what you're doing with the roads. But let me ask a basic question. What informs infrastructure? What informs development or construction of a road in a particular area? Is it development, population? What do you consider before you put up a road?
Thank you, Timothy. Good evening, viewers. It involves all that you've mentioned and a little more. It is a matrix of a number of things that are considered. First of all, we have to understand that roads are a facilitator of the other development. It makes life easier, it makes the development faster, and it makes things cheaper. So the more efficient your transport system is, or your roads, the cheaper you're likely to have your goods and services. So in consideration the economics that goes into that planning process, it is always envisaged that there is always going to be growth. And that growth is determined by the projections of the previous, the current, and what you expect in terms of GDP as the overall. But you go down deeper to determine what is expected in terms of traffic use. So all that boils down to what we look at as the volume of the traffic that shall be using the roads or the infrastructure that we're putting up. And that determines how much we're going to invest, also determined by the amount that is available. So it's a combination of so many things. The population is just an indicator, but it boils down to the number of vehicles, the type of vehicles, and what they'll be carrying. That means you're looking at the volume and looking at the loading. And then you come up with exactly what you want to do with the roads. Now, with respect to developing one against another, again, we have to apply the economics to make sure that we get the return from our money as quickly as possible, because we don't have endless pockets. We want the development to facilitate growth quickly so that government can get the taxes to invest in other development. So if we have 3 roads that we are choosing, we have to consider the one that gives that value, more value and much quicker return.
Give us some perspective on, let me use these 4 areas. One, the road in Kabale that we seem to have seen really slide off. 2, Kafu. 3, Katonga there. And also when you say economics speaks into it. Last week I was in Isinjiro. Most of the district has a Maram road, a very bad Maram road. Found 2 trucks that tipped over. Most of the matoke that comes to this central part comes from there. So I hope you can tackle this question from all the angles I have pushed it to you.
Yeah. Now before it comes in, You know, this man is a civil servant. There are also things, Timothy, that we look at. Apart from the science, we do sometimes affirmative interventions. If you look at Karenga, the IG up there are a very small group of people. Accessing them may not be something that economists would consider viable. But we want to connect the country. And sometimes in connecting the country, we spur growth even in that area. So we look at what they call the internal rate of return. We look at so many other things that they study, these people. But then also we look at some areas and we say affirmatively we are taking this decision. A very critical case is Kapchorwa Buko. Nobody would believe that Kapchorwa Buko could be open and it would make sense. So when sometimes government doesn't, is not supported by our partners because they look at the mathematics. For us, we now go as government and say, let's put a road there because we know we want to connect the country. We also want to think that there are some resources that will be eventually now exploited once a road is created there. So we have done Kapchorwa Buko. Very soon we're taking the president and we'll be inviting some of these you leaders and you come and see. Already factories are coming before we even commission the road. And yet the place was like a sleeping village yesterday. So sometimes it is not all about science. It is we, the policymakers, we take a decision and we implement it, and we have never gone wrong.
Okay.
Maybe Doctor,
Yes, that is very correct. We've actually adopted a number of exogenous factors that we use in terms of when we are doing the determination of the prioritization of the investment. So indeed, there are a number of factors that may not be driven by the economics. Moving on to your next question, which is the roads that you've mentioned, which I think have been affected by the acts of nature, mainly. It's been unfortunate, but these are in areas where they've suffered tremendously due to the rains in the recent past, and that has undermined the integrity of most of these structures. The Kabale Road that you've talked about, I think Amura, that's the one you're talking about, yeah. Fortunately, we've managed to get a contractor to intervene on that project. He's already there, mobilized, and is already working on the reinstating that project. But that is just one of them. A very good number of them have suffered. You've talked about Kafu, which is now closed for now. And some of these interventions cannot be undertaken during the time when the destruction is happening. So we have to wait it out. But in our planning as a system, we also plan for alternative movement. So that's why we have ferries, we have alternative routes. And what is important for us is to make sure that Ugandans can move from one position, one location to another. It might be an inconveniencing situation at the time, but at least the provision for them to move from one point to the next is available.
Thank you. We'll get back to some of those bridges and also discuss that. Dr. Apollo, coming to you, you have done extensively to look at the infrastructure in this country, coming from bridges and all these things there. When you look at our road network, some corners say we connect from one corner to the other. Some, like the IMF said, Uganda is not among the top 10 to be able, we have connectivity. Is that really what you see?
Thank you so much, Timothy, and good evening, viewers. First, maybe I start by correcting my name. I think I mentioned my father wouldn't be happy. It is Buregeya Apollo. Yes, and of course, it's a tongue twister. Even me, I will just settle on Apollo for a time being. Buregeya Apollo. Of course, every piece of infrastructure has a story. And these stories are motivated by the planners. Apparently, when you look at the narratives that the river infrastructure we have in Africa, these are foreign narratives coming from Europeans, coming with their standards and their frame of success, the way they see it, and they impose it on us. And it begins with actually pre-colonial times. That the infrastructure we have now was
developed to extract raw materials from us, and later, of course, then it serves to bring cheap commodities to us, and then it limits development, local industry development. And when we come, because we borrow a lot from Europe, and we use a lot of consultants from Europe who do not understand that here, for example, commerce narratives are different. In Europe, it's a labor-driven commerce system. Labor is very expensive. Materials are very cheap. Here, labor is very cheap. Materials are very expensive. And because of that, the motivations for infrastructure development, the motivations for innovations are totally different. And so when they come here, they are going to tell us, according to their standards, that we do not need infrastructure. And apparently, if we don't intervene and say, no, we want to develop our own local knowledge, we want to establish our local standards, we want to develop our own system to understand that to show that we understand how we are evolving as a society to develop our economies, then we are going to be still stuck with infrastructure that does not link the different raw materials that can facilitate productivity. For example, we have the policy now is value addition to minerals. We have a lot of iron ore in Kabale. Just a few kilometers south, we have coal, which we need to process this iron ore. From coal is in Rukwa, Tanzania. Rukwa is on Lake Tanganyika. From Rukwa to Burundi, Bujumbura. Bujumbura is a port city, I didn't know. I learned recently. It's about 600 kilometers on the lake, well studied. From Bujumbura to the deposits of iron ore is just 390 kilometers. But then we still import coal from Mombasa, through Mombasa, a journey of over 1,200 kilometers to Kampala. So because we are not able to aggregate this knowledge and advance it to the policymakers for us to change how we spend our money, then we're stuck with traditional colonial infrastructure.
But staying with you, Dr. Apollo, you have spoken about material and labor in this country. You've spoken about where the iron ore is, where the material is. What makes it very expensive to construct a road? And what does it compose of?
For you to construct a road, you need about 4 components. You need materials.
What materials?
The materials, the raw materials we have in the country, most of them.
Gravel, rock,
yes,
cement.
stones, marram, water. You need labor. You need technology, tools, and then you need some administration costs.
If you're paving it, then you need the bitumen.
And you need bitumen. Now the problem, the biggest problem actually, is the form of contract we adopted to procure contractors. This form of contract is developed in Europe. The European consultancy companies sat together and developed a procurement system that we call FIDIC. And that procurement system is the frame that establishes PPDA. What it does is that it aggregates everything: labor, materials, technology, plants, tool, and administration costs, and gives them to one person. Now, the challenge we have with that system is that it was developed for an economy, a commerce narrative, where if you're building a standard house, for example, to make it simple, in Europe, 70% will go to labor of the budget, and 30%, only 30% goes to materials. And that means the labor, the risk of construction shifts to labor. And the best person to manage labor is an engineer. And so in Europe, contractors are engineers. When it comes to here, 80% goes to materials, 20% goes to labor. Here the contractor is a businessman, because materials, you can send anybody, even a housemaid, to go and buy cement. So once the contract has been signed, the value is on materials. And so we do not respect technical input because its budget share is within the 20%. It's not profitable. And so we have businessmen, and then of course it reflects on the quality of the contracts, and then the value. But probably we need to reflect and see how the procurement system is. What procurement system can we use? I can ask Engineer Ruyimbaz here and Honorable Echeru. They will tell you that when they were building their houses, they did not use PPDA forms of contract. They did not use FIDIC. They simply hired builders. They went and bought their own materials and constructed cheaply. And if we can approach contracting that way, that we separate materials, maybe you go to roofings and hire them to deliver all the steel you need on all projects. You go to Hima Cement, hire them to deliver all the cement you need on a project, and then hire a contractor. You will have cut the project down, and then engineers, technical people who are competent to manage these projects will be interested in coming to do the works. But then also, you'll have enabled us to develop skills, to bridge the gap of lack of skills of the local content.
Thank you very much, and I'm glad you put, especially the contract part. Both UNRA and KCCA have sustainable roads as in there. But let me come to Engineer Ruyimbaz. When you are crossing, coming from when you're coming down Jinja Road, either joining Mukwano roundabout, that's a mess. If you're going towards Munyonyo and you reach somewhere in between there, it's a mess. The closure after you get to Bunga and Soya there, you can't be able to get through. Why has this city become a construction site? I haven't even spoken about Bugolobi.
Thank you so much for that question. Thank you, Timothy, and good evening, viewers. Of course, the challenge we have as a city is one. We have two very important problems that the city has. First of all, we have very old infrastructure. I'll give an example of our road network. We have a network of about 2,100 kilometers, of which 650 are paved. However, 650 kilometers are paved. 60% of it has outlived its design life. The 1,450 are gravel roads. Ideally, you should not be having a gravel road in the city. If roads have outlived their design lives, you have to repair them. You have to reconstruct them. Now, this effort you see we're putting to patching, it's making a bad situation accommodatable. Otherwise, you should be rehabilitating them or reconstructing them. And of course, I also had the comment from the minister where you have to open the patch, put in the gravel, compact it, then wait for the asphalt to be laid. All this is an issue of limited resources. You have old infrastructure and limited resources. That combination is not good. Now, we've come in to try and revamp the city infrastructure. It's like you break your hand, maybe due to old age. You'll go through some painful moment before you get well. Now we're going through some painful episode as we try to fix this road network. You cannot fix it while people are not experiencing jumps, while they're not experiencing bad driving conditions. It's not possible. So we're fortunate enough that government was able to borrow about $288 million, which we're using to fix about 70 kilometers of roads in the city. Now, of course, with the NAM, government has been able to inject in another about $15 million to specifically target the NAM corridors. But now let me go to the generic issue of funding. And the clip you played where our members of parliament are criticizing us, of course these things provoke me sometimes to speak truth to power. The power of appropriation is in parliament. As KCCA, we have a strategic plan which requires us to get about 1.4 trillion every year. We get only about 300 billion or thereabout. But then KCCA is almost a government. We have hospitals, we have markets, we have schools, We have physical planning things to do. We have stormwater drains. We have a whole stock of things. Now, when you come to now just roads, we have a budget of about 43 billion. Now, a kilometer of road, to fix a kilometer of road, you need about 6 to 7 billion. Now, with the 43 billion allocation, that's about 7 kilometers max you can fix a year. Now, supposing you're just dealing with the paved network that is old, which is about 400 kilometers. With the 7 kilometers a year, when will you get to the end? So, the issue of appropriation to support us to have a city we will enjoy to live in lies in Parliament. That's where all the decision makers are. So when we don't have resources, we cannot deliver the kind of infrastructure we are blamed for not providing. Then, of course, there are also issues which are self-imposed damage by the public. Now, if you look at, you've talked about flooding in the city. All the wetlands have been invaded and built upon. Now, when it rains, the floodplains are gone. So the water has to come to places where we dwell in. Until we change behavior, and behavior requires also political support. Again, it is in Parliament to whip and advise the public and support us as a public institution to make sure we evict people from the wetlands. I was with the Honorable Minister Chiweru when the President visited the roads in Kampala. He was kind enough to offer us equipment to be able to demolish structures that have been built in the wetlands. Now, to give you an appreciation of the cost to the economy, in Soyabunga, we're investing about close to 1.5 to 2 billion to correct a man-made problem. Money that would have done something else. Now, this is a problem created by the community. In Auto Spa, we're spending about 2.5 billion to correct a man.
The viewers will want to know, where is this Auto Spa? When you are branching from, I think that road leads us to Kampala University.
From Gaba.
From Gaba,
Yes.
you are branching now to Munyonyo.
Yes.
There is some development there which is sitting right in the middle of what you would call a river. You don't even need to be a rocket scientist to know that this man made a mistake to plant his investment here. So when it rains, the whole place is flooded. So we are going to run it down. We have given them equipment to knock it down immediately. Should have happened yesterday. The engineer is slow.
To correct that,
Yes.
government is spending 2.5 billion. 2.5 billion, how many classrooms can it build? How many markets or how much land can it buy? Now, this is the confusion created by both man-made mistakes, where the public has to also contribute, which costs government to correct, and also underfunding, which can also is something which Parliament can help us fix. Then we can provide the infrastructure. Are we going to use our salaries to build roads? No. I actually I cannot even build a quarter of a kilometer. So these are the challenges we face. So when we, as public servants, like we all are, begin criticizing ourselves in public, without looking at the problem the way it is, it creates challenges to us who are sitting back, dealing with the problem on a day-to-day basis. I'll give another example. We have about 200 kilometers of stormwater drains. These are the Nachivovo channels, Lobiji. All these channels are unlined. They need to be lined. When I say they're unlined, they are earth drains. When it rains, the velocity of water carries the earth with it.
Yes.
So the capacity of the drain is run out very quickly. Now add on to that the poor public behavior of disposing garbage in the stormwater drains adds into the problem. Anyone living near even a roadside drain will throw all their garbage in the drains. Now, these are issues that now, it's a public inconvenience costing the taxpayer and also inconveniencing the public. Now, come to the issue of garbage collection. We generate about 2,500 tons of garbage every day. We have probably about 12 to 15 working garbage collection trucks. And we also use the public sector. We're only able to collect about 50% of the garbage. Where does the 50% of the garbage go? This is something we need to interrogate, look at as Ugandans, as public servants, see how to correct that. The cost that is passed on to the country, to the economy, the inconvenience to the public is substantial. But these are issues we're having to grapple with at City Hall. how do we solve these problems while minimizing the cost to government? So those are the challenges we face. So when you say the city is in a state of a challenge, the challenges are much more than what you're saying.
And I want to stick with you, Engineer Luimbazi, because there's some things you have mentioned. You've spoken about garbage. There's also responsibility, behavior. Behavior I will bring to the professor to be able to discuss that. But and to get to the part where we're talking about, you're pointing a lot of fingers to government, funding and all these things. But let's also look at KCCA. When we look at garbage and we look at the area where garbage is being taken somewhere along Gayaza Road, Chitezi.
Yes.
It's impossible right now.
True.
And also the garbage can't be taken there. But also the cost of garbage to be taken there is also high. Is there a plan for waste management in this city to be able to, relieve the people of what's happening? But let me also get to my other question. When you award these contracts, say Bunga, let's talk about Bugolobi, let's talk about Munyonyo, what is entailed in it? Because seems like there's no traffic plan, seems like there's no idea of what should be happening, and what is happening there?
Thank you so much. I'll begin with waste management. Our end game is to have a zero waste in the city, whereby garbage is turned into value and used, reused, recycled, and so that people can get value out of it. We don't need to be taking garbage to the landfill. Most countries have stopped doing that. However, that requires an initial investment, and we're trying to get private sector investors to do that. That is our long-term plan. Right now, of course, the Chitezi landfill has reached its capacity. Secondly, Chitezi is not only serving Kampala alone. It is serving all the neighboring districts, Wakiso, Mpigi, and name it. All of them are using Chitezi. Of course, the major responsibility comes to KCCA. As Kampala, we host a population of about 5.5 million during the day, 4 million during the night. So if everyone's generating about half a kilogram of waste, the pressure point is actually in Kampala. So we are obligated to be the first point of call to deal with that Chitezi Road. Good enough, we have resources to fix it. However, as I told you, the landfill is full. We have spare land in Dundu, that is in Mukono. Now again, we're facing public pressure not to utilize it as a landfill. Of course, it fits into our plan to have, that's what has forced us to go to a zero waste plan. How do we convert waste into value so that we don't have to take waste to the landfill? So that is our plan regarding dealing with the Chitezi Road. There is resources for it. We plan to decommission the Chitezi landfill, and we plan to see how not to use Dundu land and have some private investor come and invest in trying to convert waste into value. And that will sort our problem for waste. It will take us about 2 to 3 years. Of course, there are some undertakings we have to give the investor. There must be an off-take agreement for power, because they will convert waste to power. So Ministry of Energy must sign off an off-take agreement for the power being generated, or we buy it. Then when you look at the issue of what are the traffic management plans, the number of diversions available, even when you block Autospa. Lukuli Road is available, and there are diversions. There is Gava Road that takes you immediately before the spa, where we've closed the road, takes you onto Lukuli Road. You can also use the Entebbe Expressway for those who want to get quickly into the city. So the options are available. It is the failure of the public to utilize them. And maybe, okay, the options are not as many, but during this NAM convention, we've opened up a number of other diversion routes that can be utilized. UCB Rise is being upgraded, rehabilitated and upgraded. We have Prince Kakungulu Road is also being upgraded. Which other road? Seriso Road, the one that goes through Muyenga, is also being rehabilitated. So due to the fact that we had limited funds, we were not able to do this, but government was able to give us some financing to prepare for this NAM, about 60 billion, which we've used to open up a number of diversion routes that are available for communities. Definitely, when we build roads,
on that one, engineer, we have agreed that we will come back maybe to UBC and other partner media houses to let the citizens know that this road is available. We just make it abundantly clear to them when they are especially towards the time of the arrival of the guests, because many people are used to their traditional routes. They know that you have to move from Salama to up to this place. Now, if we decide that Salama becomes a route for the guests, we must be able to tell them where else they can move to without just imagining that traffic will guide them. So we are coming back with you and the traffic people and my ministry to explain to the citizen where they will be passing, and also the condition of the road at that time. It can be Maram, but well done Maram, something
Absolutely.
like that.
Now, to wrap up, to expect the kind of repairs we're doing to come with no inconvenience is also asking for too much. Inconvenience will definitely be there. What we're trying to do is minimize the time it takes for us to conclude the works. So our contractors are working day and night. The major challenge we have is the rain. We are working in a rainy season. So, and you cannot build a road while it is raining, while the road surface is wet.
We'll get back to that and discuss peak hours if there are no options like working at night and all these things. But let me come to Professor. Professor, you and I are road users, engineers here, plus our Honorable Minister President here. As a road user, what would you be earning? Yesterday, just crossing from Garden City or West Mall to get to that Mukwano roundabout, 7 a.m. in the morning, took me 2 hours to get to Mistio. So, as a road user, what is your desire? What would you desire to see connectivity from where to where? And what would you say, this is a good thing?
Thank you very much, Timothy, and good evening, our viewers. Good evening, fellow panelists. I think that's a very great question, but allow me to start with a comment someone gave me as we were coming here. One was, Prof, a few questions, please. Is the quality of infrastructure predetermined by the events and the hosts we host? Ahead of CHOGM, we invested a lot into the beautification and street lighting of Kampala, and it all went to waste because most of the undertakings were shoddy. Now, the latest excitement is now gathering. What will happen afterwards? And for how long shall we continue with these habits of only patching up and working hard when guests are coming? So that is one, but that's not the question you asked me. I think for me as a user, my biggest inconvenience of roads is the time we spend to the workplace. For me, that's the biggest loss.
The time you spend
commuting
or sitting on the traffic light.
Yes, because if you imagine that a normal work day is 8 to 5, according to the Employment Act, and people are going to spend 2 of those coming and 2 going. It creates then an incentive for people to leave early, so as to reach home earlier. So actually work is being cheated. Instead of 8 work hours, we are working for 4.
Maybe less.
And even less. So there are hidden costs to the economy because of the nature of our road network as we debate, which we need to fix. And I think it's not that people don't appreciate that KCCA and the UNRA are doing a lot. I think there's a lot going on and we appreciate. I think the problem is how, in spite of the lot going on, there's little change of what's going on. And the KCCA does a lot of patching and we really appreciate that. But there are some perennial potholes. Like those of us who come to Makerere via Kubidi. I don't know what's wrong with Kubidi. We've managed to convince ourselves as lay people, sir, that it is because there must be a water hole. After when we were at university during our time as undergrads, I lived in Africa Hall. When there was water shortage, we would go to carry water from Kakande's church. It was not yet built.
So there was like a spring there.
So that's what we imagine. We've convinced ourselves that there is a spring because every year KCCA blocks that part and repairs it. 2-3 months after the repair, it has sunk again. So either we might need a special kind of technology to deal with that spot, or we shall just have to accept that this is a lake. So there is that. I think the issue is not the lack of appreciation of what's being done, but the problem is the constant repair on the same spot throughout. It creates an inconvenience, it creates damage to people's cars, it creates delay. Actually, for people who work, the biggest challenge is delay in commuting. So that is one. I think patching is okay. I mean, I did my PhD in the UK. The UK would never have money to do a long road. They just had a maintenance system where patching was throughout. You knew every Sunday they are patching. So they didn't wait for a hole to get like this. They patched it when it was like that. So if you are sleeping on Sunday, you'd wake up to drills because they are repairing. Some would be 5 centimeters by 10. Others. So when you look at their roads, they look like they are paved. But actually it's not paving, it's patching. So they patch throughout. I think that could also help to limit the thing. We don't have to wait for a situation to become bad, because then it becomes very expensive. I think that is it. But I also think there are certain things we can prevent. When we say someone, I don't know where Autospa is, but when we say someone built in the wetland, isn't there room for regulation? Because a building doesn't come out overnight. So when this person was building in a drainage channel, whatever, waterway, because now you, government and KC and everybody, okay, Uganda government, you're spending a lot to break down that, because demolition is an expensive process. Then you have to find where you're going to take the rubble, okay? So it's an expensive, but couldn't we have prevented that? And for us as lay people, the question is who is in charge and what is the role of regulation? Okay? I remember there was a Honorable Nyakana whose house got broken because he built in a port, what did he do? He built in a swamp.
Centenary here.
In the wetland, yes.
Yeah, but that's the only person whose house has ever been broken.
No, they are
Okay.
still fighting to remain there.
Okay, but anyway, so it happened. So there is that. I think for me, it talks a lot to regulation, but I think also, and I'm talking as a layperson, I'm not an engineer, the issue of projects sometimes taking too long also becomes an inconvenience to road users. I know your KCCF, maybe that is spared. You don't have very, very long projects. But if you go to up-country towns, I don't know how many times in Mbale people have had to demonstrate to have roads repaired, because a road, and Mbale is not a big town, it's a small town. But you see, you have a road lasting 2, 3, 4, 5 years. And people are demonstrating every year.
When they are working on it.
Yes, they're working on it, but you see, permanently, it is like that. It is actually a building site. So now, for us road users, we don't understand the things Engineer Breje is talking about, and business model, and engineer model. We don't understand what Engineer Ruimbas is talking about. People are like,
They want a road.
I mean, you found here a road, we were passing, in as bad as it was. If you want to do something about it, then do something about it. Don't make a bad situation worse, because in the future, it's going to be a better thing. So that is another thing. Then the other road, I think, which could cause a problem, and some of the things we could do is the Nakapiripiri Muyembe Road.
Muyembe, Nakapiripiri.
Every year, UNRWA is relaunching and promising this time it is finished. Those of us who use that road, you're told it has now moved from Karamoja, it's coming, it's around Cheptui, it's coming. The issue is it never comes. But what else is happening on that road? Marble, trucks carrying marble from Karamoja. So you can't say it doesn't have economic value. The trucks carrying cement. One point time you pass and the maram is so good, it's like a carpet. You can sleep on it. Come 1 month later, it has developed ditches because of the cement trucks. Then you have, because the cement trucks are blasting on the hill, so the water can't find a clear path. So when it rains, it goes everywhere. So then you find ridges across the road. So while the trucks are creating these longitudinal kind of trenches in the road, or dents, the water is now crossing the road and creating other small ridges. Then, of course, UNRWA will also come back now and create another carpet. Then the same cycle continues. And the question is, I mean, this is not a very long space, from Muyembe to Nakapiripiri.
Now I have an answer for that.
What happened? So each time you read, then the Arab contractor bust, then these tabloids that are not the mainstream media always have stories of what happened there. But there are things you can do. For example, why not have a cement factory that end, so that you carry an end product? Because the things, I mean, you just look and see why Ugandan roads do not last. The utilization is so bad. These trucks carry heavy stones. They weigh down, even if it was a wonderful road, it has a problem. So when you do that, then you are making a road and destroying it and making a road. So at the end of the day, our projects take so long because the way we use them is not cost effective. It is self-destructive. So one, can we complete the projects on time? But also two, so you don't inconvenience people, but also you don't run high costs. But thereafter, ensure that they are well utilized so that you don't have a road being repaired. They are expensive. He has just told us the cost of a kilometer. So that is one. But then it is also good that on this panel, Engineer Luyimba has raised the issue of behavioral, the need for behavioral. Most of our problems are behavioral.
And Professor, I want us to come back and start from there. Because that behavioral problem is not KCCA, the minister, or UNRWA. It's us individual Ugandans.
Exactly.
So allow me, let's take a quick break. When I come back, I'm coming back to the professor on how personal responsibility is important on what direction our country goes. This and more after this break.
Thank you.
Jovia ng'oyolekera ku lugendo luno olw'obulamu nkuwa ekirabo eky'amaanyi agatazizibwa, amaanyi okulabibwa n'okuwulirwa mu mawanga ag'ewala ennyo, okutuuka buli wamu nga yadde togenzeeyo, ensi yonna ng'ekuli mu ngalo. Okutambula mu biseera n'okumanya buli kimu ekirina okumanyibwa. Jovia, kino kye kirabo kyange gy'oli.
Tewali kkubo ku ki gy'osobola okukola omukutu nnandameggwa ogwa MTN.
Metu Bus Industries Namambe, the manufacturers of buses for transporters, schools, tour operators and special purpose vans. Metu Bus Industries offers a range of buses known for safety, comfort and reliability. Depending on your needs, a bus can simply be a point A to point B people mover with just seats or a special design that includes a restroom, power outlet, Wi-Fi, television and a refreshment center. Buy your buses from Metu and support industrialization of Uganda.
Uganda Revenue Authority is proud to announce the Taxpayers Appreciation Awards, where URA will recognize and reward the most compliant taxpayers of the year. This event will be held tomorrow, Thursday, November 23rd, 2023, at URA headquarters in Nakawa. Who will scoop the top prize? Catch the proceedings live on URA TV and UBC TV as we salute some of the men and women who are building Uganda. Uganda Revenue Authority, developing Uganda together.
This week on UBC.
This is Kakene campsite. It's one of the most beautiful campsites we have here in Kidepo, with 360-degree view of the park, and one can enjoy the beautiful sunrise and the beautiful sundown here right at Kakene campsite.
Avoca Kidepo is special. You see, we are just 5 meters from a buffalo. You see the buffalo? Nowhere else on earth you can get that. But this is Kidepo. And also, as you can see, the valleys are very good. It is facing even mountains, and even those ones you can see in South Sudan. You're seeing those mountains in South Sudan. And you can see this one from the east and the west.
Welcome back from that quick commercial break here on Behind the Headlines. My name is Timothy Nyangweso. I have an expert panel, engineers, doctors, the Honorable Minister, Professor Sali, and we're discussing everything infrastructure in this country, the pain points of Ugandans, especially the challenges on roads, bridges, connectivity, and being able to have people and product moving on those roads. I will be getting to your feedback in a short while, but I want to jump to Professor Sarah because she was hinting on a pattern thing that affects all of us, minus pointing fingers. This behavior issue was brought by Engineer Luimbazi. How do we nip this one in the bud?
Before she comes in, Timothy, here is a situation. A big person, probably a professor even at that, is driving a VX.
Yes.
Stops in a Mbalala, that area. Is it called Mbalala? Where they buy chicken and the rest. Namaojolo. And buys a lot of chicken because he or she can afford with her family. And as she drives towards Mukono, or towards now Lugazi, he opens the window and tosses the bones or whatever now into the windscreen of the oncoming vehicle in the middle of the road. I'm not talking about my pedestrians from Amuria who are coming on Teso coach. I'm talking about these powerful people who are, there is a lot of responsibility in our country. They are quick just to say government, government, government. But if each one of us knew what to do, I think the country would be 100% sorted out, in my opinion.
Professor, you and I, not engineers, but how do we change behavior? How do we direct this campus so that we're all pulling in the same direction?
Thank you very much, Timothy. I wanted to, first of all, thank Engineer Luimbazi for bringing it up, especially considering that he's an engineer. You know, we have been duped to think that it is only science that matters in the world today. It is only science that matters in development. The truth of the matter is if you don't fix behavior, those people will actually run down the scientific development you have developed. There's someone called Tom Bauer who wrote about the modernization of the mind. His book was about a critique of modernization, where in the 60s and 70s and 80s, people were really talking about modernization in terms of infrastructure. And his argument is that if you don't modernize the mind, you will simply put up artifacts which backward people are going to run down. Okay? He didn't use the word backward, but if the mind is not aligned with what you're doing, you'll be a problem. That's why each time we are unhappy with the government and we protest, or with the university, the first thing we do is we light a fire on the road.
Can you imagine?
So are we aware of what we are doing? Then tomorrow we shall be complaining about that road because it broke, because we lit a fire on it. So I think behavioral science or behavioral studies are very important. And one of the challenges we have, you know, we are a younger population. We are among the youngest countries in terms of population demographics. 67% is 15 years and below. But then also if you go to the 30s, 80% is 30 and below, or 35 and below, they are youth. So you end up with people who, you know, Minister Chero started by talking about how old people raised great kids. So the generations keep changing like this. Not many people are aware of your old values. The nature of the economy we run, with all parents having to work so as to be able to put food on the table, does not allow people time to sit home with their children and educate them what the cultural values were. So the churches are equally busy, the grandparents maybe are not there, or they are very far. So life has changed. We have to find a way of teaching people morals and teaching people ways. It can be top down from Ministry of National Guidance, but maybe it is also full of scientists who are wondering how to go about this process. But the good thing, and on a positive note, well, maybe I need to thank the Minister of Education for nominating me on the National Curriculum Development Council board. And when we were on the inaugural meeting, I think we were being inducted 2-3 weeks ago, one of the things which came up is that the NCDC is trying to find a way of fixing this, because their argument is if you don't fix the morals, you are just going to produce clever crooks, okay? People must have aspects of what does this country stand for? What is the ideology? How do we take development? How do we relate to development as citizens? The first thing when you're angry with the state should not be to destroy, okay? Then you cannot be clean and you want your car clean and you're littering for everybody. That is a challenge. So we have to fix, so in the absence of cultural institutions, in the absence of religious institutions, the school system has to come up. That means behavioral studies, social sciences, humanities have to be paid to attention in as much as you're doing the science. Otherwise, you'll end up with very clever procurement people who will tell you how the costs that Dr. Bregia talked about can go to 10 times because they're actually out to swindle or to siphon off things. So if we have to deal with the soul of the person, we have to deal with the moral fabric of society. Otherwise, it cannot be everyone doing for themselves. And just like the country sits down and plans for national development, for science, for STEM, the country can also sit down and plan for where it wants this country to go ideologically, morally, behaviorally. And I think the Ministry of National Guidance should take its role seriously. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And let me get back to the Honorable Minister. And I know there are quite a number of questions and also submissions. Emphasis on the road there. But Honorable Minister, some things raised by Engineer Luimbazi, especially on funding, that I would like you to respond to there. But also help us, give us a scope. What is the role of Road Fund? What's the role of UNRA? What's the role of KCCA as policy makers? These look like very many people doing the same thing.
Wow. Now, before I do that, can I, if you allowed me 2 minutes, to look at the values that make a difference? I recently was privileged to lead a team to South Korea. And while in South Korea, what you see as a revolution that has taken place in that country was first and foremost created by 2 elements: opening up the country by way of roads and bridges, and fixing the mindset of the citizens. South Koreans are proud. Like, if you gave my engineer here a task, his pride would be, I accomplished it in time, and this is the quality I've delivered. They are very proud of achievements that are tangible and that you can really mark. In Uganda today, we have a problem, Dr. Saleh. I have gone to a place where a civil servant, I am a minister, a chief guest in a function of fundraising. Then I raise 3 million shillings. Yeah. Then a civil servant, a humble man with a smaller salary than mine, raises 30 million, and says, I will also deliver 100 bags. He's more junior to me, but here is too senior in terms of what he has just done in this church. Then the religious leaders, some of them, and I want to say this on record, they quickly get excited and say, oh, all of you stretch your hands and pray for this man, the one of 30 million. Yes. God really look at this man, multiply his. Now me who gave 3 million, nobody now stretches his hand to bless me, because, you know, that kind of competition is going to make people now want to get money from any source, even if it means delivering a hospital to the country. They will take that money, because when you deliver it to, when you appear with it in a function and you appear like you are a person who is loaded in the language of Ugandan, then you are celebrated as a hero. We need to tackle that. Yeah. That is what South Korea has stopped. You saw the president was impeached, that lady who had just visited here. And when I looked at what she did not steal money. She communicated to, like me now, talking to my engineer here, that award doctor there that contract. In my opinion, doctor is a good person. That's all that they proved, and the lady was impeached. That's how serious they are. So coming back to what you're asking, originally we should have, what we are doing now, I told you, we are now doing what we call program approach to managing our service delivery. If somebody asked you to say, But are you going back to amalgamate the ministries? Because long ago, you would get the Ministry of Works and I think Housing and Urban Development, because they were related in the way they were doing things. But probably in the wisdom of the president and government, because of the big population now we had, they had to kind of create all these other small other sectors. But what does Road Fund do? Road Fund, we went to Namibia, we went to Kenya, in the neighborhood here. It is an institution established by the state, and it is supposed to receive resources, and receive resources that should take care of all these things, including what Engineer Luimbaze is saying, including having the capacity to invest if it was properly developed. Unfortunately, I must say that on record, we have not allowed Road Fund to really flourish the way it is supposed to be by law. That is the unfortunate element. That's why you hear we are supposed to operationalize the second generation, where some percentage of resources should be going to it, and then that those resources would be now the ones Road Fund would say, you Kampala, this is what you should do, you UNRWA, this is what you should use, and so on and so forth. That's what's happening in Namibia. It's a powerful institution. That's what's happening in the neighborhood here in Kenya. But I also want to hasten, you are hearing that we are likely to rationalize. Yes, there is a move. I think, and I want to go on record on this, having compared some of these agencies that we created in the country with what the neighbors and other countries created, the other fellows were very smart. They created these agencies with a proper foundation and a very defined organogram, so that you know that it is so and so who is the final person there, and it comes to this and comes so. Theirs are getting bigger. They are even creating more branches from the agencies that they created. Unfortunately for us, we are amalgamating, we are rationalizing. Why? We seem to have missed the point. There was a critical junction where we missed the direction. So we established these agencies, but did not lay a proper foundation, and did not also spell out who accounts to who. And when they went haywire, then we said, I think we don't need them. That's basically what happened, I can tell you. For example, if you look at all these organizations, they should be there. When they were doing, because I was looking, when I went to Namibia, I was asking my colleague, my counterpart there. He's not an engineer, he's a teacher. The minister there is a teacher with a background of agriculture. But he has done so well. How has he done so well? He inherited systems that work. Inherited systems that work. He has agencies that each agency reports to him. Now, if we are going to have a system here where an agency may not even report to the minister who is supposed to be the supervisor, and the minister only hears about it when there is a scandal, then that's where there is a problem. Then the question is, it is not that agency. How did we start it? Did we put in place safeguards that should have made this not work, not possible? We missed that point. And now we seem to have decided that, okay, if that's the case, let's now pour the baby with the water. It's very unfortunate. We are missing the baby. We should have just found a way of pouring the water and get the baby first and then sort out ourselves. But we have taken a decision. It is a decision that is apparently reversible. But I know after some time, we'll have to revisit some of the things and see what can be done. That is as far as the agencies are concerned. Allow me say something that Professor hinted to, that I saw there. And UNRWA, you need to work with us very closely on this. Since I joined the sector, my heart bleeds when I'm driving and following a vehicle which is carrying a tonnage of 80 metric tons or 90 on my road. Where is the axle load unit here? You go to Kenya here, your car is measured after some point. You forget about leave alone the established centers. There will be those mobile axle load areas measured, and you are arrested from Mukono if you have passed Buyogerere. And they will offload the excess because the life of the road depends on the weight that plies that road. So we cannot continue the way we are doing things. And I am appearing like, oh, what is the minister doing now? Is he lamenting? No, there is a big problem and we must address it. Professor here is talking of Hamuyembe Nakapriprit Road. Let me say something about Soroti Moroto Road. Soroti Moroto Road was a beautifully completed road by CCCC. Very beautiful. But that's where all the marble stones that are coming to Kampala Mukono here, is it Kampala Cementers or something? All the marble stones ply that route. Huge lorries, what do you call them, Maglukumi or something? I don't know why even that where it came from. So huge lorries. So as we talk now, somewhere where they turn within, you check within Moroto City itself, they have developed potholes. The road which has not even gone past 6 years. We have not even commissioned some areas. So we are saying, let's go back to factories must be located in where the raw material is. That's one of the critical considerations. For an elementary economist, you don't need to be a PhD man to be able to ferry lime all the way from there. I'm very happy recently the president went and commissioned that first thing that is going to do cement in Moroto. A lot more. All the marble that should be leaving Karamoja should leave Karamoja when it is a finished product.
Yes.
And Honorable Minister, sticking there, something that Engineer Luimbazi raised, funding. How does someone who contributes 70% to GDP ask for 100 billion, receive 20 billion, then receive 6 billion to fill potholes with mud?
You know, funding can never be enough, Engineer Luimbazi. Funding can never be enough. I sit in that cabinet. Fortunately, I've been lucky to be there for a while now. I came to government particularly in 2006, and as you can see, I'm still around and I intend to still be around. That's a reality. So I have had a chance to sit there and watch. You people, you don't know what goes on inside there. The basket is so small. It is like this polygamous man with 11 wives. And Christmas is approaching. Mm-hmm. And each wife with her children are presenting their request. So sometimes what we are forced to do is to buy one uniform material and say, now you have this. There used to be what we were calling Bangladesh from, I think, some material which is pink, so that all the women first know that I think we are all the same. You know, we are forced sometimes to do that. You know, it is not that we know, we think this wife has 11 kids, so she will get this. So that's the challenge. You have the limited resources. What people are asking us engineers who are here, people are saying, with the little that you have, prove that you are really able to deliver. Let's deliver with the little so that it becomes an impetus for the system now to say, I think let's add them more. So with the little, like KCCA, I can tell the country, KCCA is the face of Uganda. If KCCA is not fixed, there are people who will come all the way from Europe and only reach Kampala and go back. And if KCCA is messy, then the case of border borders. I went and brought a guest from Entebbe in my car, an American. And the guest comes enjoying the expressway. When we entered here and he saw the border borders running bumper to bumper, do you know the expression? You know these people with good English. The guest told me, this is organized chaos.
Yes.
I had never heard such a phrase before, organized chaos. And I was very embarrassed. I didn't know what to say to my guest. Am I taking a guest to a place of organized chaos? So we are determined to fix this. And I think I want also to say on record, Luimbazi, we need to sit down and sort out the question of borders and fix that question once and for all. It has political ramifications, but those ramifications, we can surmount them when we have sorted the problem.
Okay. Thank you very much, Honorable Minister. Before I get to you, Engineer Chizito, let me first read some feedback. John says, the Honorable Minister should act fast because the roads will cause many problems to the people of Uganda. Justina Kello from Wakiso says, do we who have a master plan for Kampala, and if yes, if we have a master plan for Kampala, and if yes, why is it taking forever to be implemented? What entails the physical master plan there? Geoffrey says, Honorable Minister, why is it that we always wait till to host major events and start panicking about infrastructure? Besides the notifications to host such events, it's always announced in the previous meetings. Why wait until the dying hours? How can we convince us that the roads will be ready in 1 month? Julius Isingoma, a geotechnician and a professional civil engineer. I recently visited Kigali and I was left wondering what could have bewitched Uganda. When you look at if you look at Rwanda, especially Kigali roads, infrastructure, the traffic lights, the walkways, it leaves you thinking whether we have actual qualified officers in KCCA. If I am not mistaken, every financial year, KCCA allocates money for benchmarking, but again, what do they benchmark? Just go to Rwanda and benchmark there. Ahmed from Entebbe, could you please ask the executive director, the deputy executive director of KCCA and the minister on why Ugandan infrastructure is expensive compared to East African neighbors? I hear a kilometer costs us 3.5 billion. Rashid from Rubaga, Uganda is really ashaming us as citizens. In every eye, incoming tourists, due to the bad roads, we welcome them. Not only Kampala has bad roads, but even several roads in Uganda are worrying, and the state is to break potholes. Kayongo, this will be the last one. Honorable, in the House, but people who cut in the roads like Gayaza Road, at a place known Kubiri, near Total, the road was new. Why did they cut it again, and the holes and the left ditches open? Okay. Honorable Minister, hold that one. I'll come back to you. Let me come to Engineer Chizito. Engineer Chizito, as UNRA, do you have, because we came from sector and now we're in a program-based budgeting, do you have any relation or any collaboration with other ministries, departments and agencies? Because when we look at Kafu, when we look at Katonga, and rivers busting banks, Nyamwamba last year, is there coordination to be able to have this in hindsight? Because news came out in September about these El Nino rains. It's not like they came this morning and were shocked. Do you have that collaboration to be able to mitigate such challenges?
Yes, Timothy, there is. In terms of implementation of the program, that program is spearheaded by the ministry. That's the parent ministry, which is Ministry of Works and Transport. So UNRWA is only implementing a component, a subset of that program. The program has many other sub-programs and other activities that are being undertaken. But the key one, if we talk about the roads themselves, the other sectors that the roads support are part of the program in terms of the planning and implementation. For instance, the program has tourism because the roads that we construct are intended to support the tourism sector. The program has other sectors that we do support, like energy, all the primary growth sectors. With respect to prediction and planning for the environment and the weather, especially having weather resilient infrastructure, yes indeed, and especially at the planning stage. The Meteorological Center is one of those that gives some indication of exactly what is going to happen. But the return period for most of our rains has now reached, I think, over 50 years. That's why we have extremely heavy rains and these heavy rains, you can only accommodate so much in your planning over a period of time. Our roads are designed for a period of 15 to 20 years, so you can only have as much incorporated within the road, especially when you have a budget that is only taking you up to so much. Otherwise, the alternative would have been for us to have bridges everywhere, not just culverts. You just put a bridge, have $100 million for every single problem that you have to solve the problem once and for all for the next 150 years. But we don't have that. And what we do is to have interventions that can help us to allow the users of the roads to have alternatives where possible. And also, as we know, the funding is not really as consistent, and it's not as the cash flow that we get annually doesn't allow us to have prior interventions. As my colleague mentioned earlier, you'd want to have timely interventions. If you're going to have, if you know that this is going to happen in the next 2 years, you want to do the expansion, you want to do the improvement, you want to do the rehabilitation way before you actually find yourself dealing with an upsurge of either the weather or traffic or any other eventualities that come along.
And just two more questions that someone really raises here. He talks about a contract he got, and because of corruption and all these things within UNRA, the contract went away. How are you as UNRA dealing with especially the conniving between either people internally or to avoid such incidences of corruption? And something that was mentioned by either Professor Sarah, the gauge of the road for trucks that carry marble, for trucks that carry, how does, what is in the works there?
Timothy, can I, before the engineer talks about the corruption in the in contracts award, I've been a minister of disaster management for 15 years, as you must know. Disasters are in 3 categories. There are those you can prevent, there are those you just mitigate, there are those you must manage. No scientist has come up with a mathematical precision that can tell you that this spot is where the disaster is going to happen. No scientist. We have been looking at Budoda, we have been looking at Nyamwamba, we have been looking at Ruizi, we have been looking at Aoja. Now it is Kafu. What we can do in disasters is to prepare to really adjust. That's what they call adapt. So when I hear people on television bashing UNRA or even bashing government, couldn't we foresee that Kafu would break its bank? It is only Christ who can do that, and Prophet Muhammad, may peace be upon him. No scientist would have predicted that River Kafu would be the one to break its bank and not Nyamwamba. So what should be done? What the question the citizens should be asking, Echweru and you, UNRA, now that it has happened, what are you doing and what are you doing to mitigate future happenings? Because they are going to continue. Then it is again compounded by what I think Engineer Luimba. In some of the areas, you find again people have settled on the wetlands, even in the countryside. Or if they have not settled in the wetlands, they have just decided to turn it to what they use for. You heard me in Katonga blaming my investor who is harvesting sand in a place which is supposed to be a waterway. That's what happened in Katonga. So we cannot prevent rivers from breaking their banks. That cannot be prevented. What can only be done is, how can we respond? If it is not a flash flood, and it is a stagnant flood, then that's when you now come to UNRA and say, this place has been flooded for a week, and mothers must go to the hospital. Can you bring us an inflatable boat? Can you bring us a canoe? Can you bring us something like this in the meantime? So that's what we did in Aoja in 2007. Okay. So the Ugandans should know that some disasters cannot be prevented. I thought I should just emphasize that. And
Engineer Kizito, just to talk about corruption, I also want to give an example. Katonga, that whole area that the minister has spoken about, the sand mining there. Like tomorrow morning, we know the sun is coming out, or when the rain falls. We know come Christmas, there's going to be a stampede in that area. For the last 4 or 5 years, it has been the same issue. Why has it failed to be dealt with?
Okay, I'll start with
The corruption.
the corruption aspect. Yes. I thought the minister was going to take this.
If he had it.
But yes, but corruption is a menace that really not just UNRWA, but something that we need to address as a country. But you asked about specifically what UNRWA, how UNRWA is dealing with it. I don't know the specifics of that particular project or procurement you're talking about, but I don't want to go into it either. What is important is for us to understand that there is a process and there is a post-process, which is the audit. One of the organizations that is extremely and rigorously audited is UNRWA. I think at any one time there are about 2 audits going on, both during and after every project, even after several years. And indeed, you cannot say that it's zero, nothing is happening. The tolerance as far as management is concerned and the tone is that it has to be zero tolerance. But some of these things occur and you can't rule them out. But the intention of management, the intention of the organization is to make sure that there is a transparent and there is an opportunity for everybody to participate in the procurements. That is, there's no procurement that actually is undertaken by an individual. The processes include several areas where these checks are being done. And like I said, even after the process, there is always an opportunity to look back and see how the processes were undertaken, particularly for the high value. Now, you also wonder why UNRWA? Because it is where the money is. The attraction that comes from everywhere outside the buildings is a lot, is heightened as far as the interest is concerned. Now, the temptation is also only up to a certain limit. When you have everybody standing outside there hoping and praying that they'll get a piece of the pie through corruption, the temptation is going to be upon the employees and within the organization. Actually, we should applaud that up to this date, there's only very isolated incidents that are occurring as far as corruption is concerned. But these are all, at any one time, once they are identified, they are addressed and they are tackled immediately and within the possibility of management's capability to get rid of all of it. I think you mentioned now that Katonga. One thing I have to give you at least some level of confidence this time round is that the intervention that is happening now, it was kind of a blessing in disguise, is that we have a contractor that has taken up to reinstate the bridge, actually to construct a totally new bridge starting next year at that location. What he's doing right now is to put an alternative 80-meter jetty that is already settled on the section to make sure that we have some traffic moving at least Christmas Day. I know that prior to Christmas, all vehicles will be using the road. So there is no chance this time around that it's going to fall in. There's nothing to fall because the bridge already went. The one that was weak, the one that is remaining is adequate to carry the traffic that is using it up to the buses. And it is being monitored all the time.
Shall I play this clip between the 20th and the 24th?
Yes. I can just confirm. Timothy, I can confirm that in the next few weeks, I should be going with General Katumba or somebody accompanying us at a senior level to hand over the jetty, what they call a jetty. I asked them, why don't we use ordinary Amuria English? An alternative metallic bridge, but it can carry as heavy as 40 metric tons. And it will be there for probably 4 or 5 years while we are doing the real durable bridge. So it's ready. Even if something happened to the other surviving one now, God forbid, we have somewhere where people will not get stuck now accessing Western Uganda. We take that road, and particularly that point, because that road is a link to so many countries. So it is an obligation. It's not just for Uganda. It's an obligation for the rest of the country. I mean, the rest of the countries place a burden on us. So it's something we are taking very seriously. So, Doctor, in case you want to go home for Christmas, be very sure you'll arrange. That I can promise.
Doctor, let me come to you. Especially on the road, the surface of the road. We layman Ugandans really don't understand this, but Engineer Rimbas spoke about 10 to 15 engineers. It was also spoken within the same range there. What innovations, what technologies to reduce this cost? Because it comes down to the taxpayer to pay for this road. How do we reduce this cost? What technologies, what innovations, what can we do different?
Thank you so much, Timothy. I think we need to go back to develop a comprehensive plan of how we transport our people in Uganda. For example, Professor Sari talks about trucks moving from mines, I think using Tororo Road.
No, coming from Karamoja, through Muyembe.
Then all the way to whether Tororo
Yes.
or...
The people that are licensing these trucks, which are 40 and above tons, are the same people who are constructing the roads and limiting the tonnage on the roads to 30 metric tons. So I think we need a comprehensive plan that is coherent, that addresses all the gaps. That if we know we need to move minerals, materials, heavy cargo, let's go for railway systems. A railway line actually has an advantage that, unlike a road which you design for 15 years, a railway system will last 50 years.
Even more.
It requires less maintenance, yet we keep repeating, maintaining, replacing roads every 10 to 15 years. So we need a comprehensive plan, and I think the conversations here point to poverty. Why are we poor? Where is the poverty coming from? Are we as citizens applying ourselves sufficiently to be productive, to pay higher taxes so that the government has money to make sure that the infrastructure is fixed? That's one. Two, is government actually patriotic in its economics? Does it demonstrate economic patriotism when it is developing this infrastructure? One thing government needs to know is that the act of construction itself benefits local industry. It develops local industry. And therefore, when we're busy handing over projects to foreigners who will, of course, make profits, make money. First of all, they're funded by World Bank. They come with tax incentives, tax waivers, import duty waivers. And so we become markets for their home materials. They don't want to use our materials because now they can import their materials without taxes cheaply. They start importing cement to work on our roads. What happens to our cement factories? They start importing everything, bitumen, etc. And so we find we are cheated and we remain backwards. If we don't fix the economy, if we don't become patriotic, if we don't develop coherent industrial policies that link to each other, then we're going to remain poor, and then the roads are going to fail.
And you mentioned something about material earlier on, where you talked about how high the material is. What other material can be used in construction of roads, especially to bring that cost down and have connectivity?
I think it begins with, I would say, engaging Ugandans, because roads, the way we look at roads, every Ugandan is crying, pointing at KCCA. They're pointing at UNRA, because we are looking at it as an alien thing, an infrastructure procured from abroad, put there for us to use. It's like a shut boat. But if we opened up and worked with the communities, engaged them to be able to apply their materials, would reach an understanding to say that yes, this road, and of course the pressure comes from how we are developing our estates, that this road can still be a Maram road. Let's focus on these roads that are more productive, that yield higher. The materials that we use would come from environment, our own environments, and then probably would focus more on research and development of these new technologies. There is a technology, ProBase. I think it existed about 15 years ago. I think
We're testing it. We are still testing it and seeing if, whether it works in our setting.
There's a road, it's sealed. Bwayogere Chirinya. And I used to use that road because I was doing projects in Chirinya. That road was intact without dust for 4 years. That's about 12, 15 years ago. And this was promoted, I think, by Professor Bagampade of Makerere. But you see, there is the initiatives to innovate around our poverty, to make sure that actually we can afford the materials we are using to construct, to make sure that we can actually afford, have a standard for ourselves that will lift us to become prosperous economically. So those are the gaps that we have.
Engineer Luhimbazi, let's come back to what's happening. What is the detail within the contract? Because the traffic plan, if you pass by Munyonyo, it is appalling. When you head into Bugolobi, it is very absurd. When you get to Mukwano roundabout, is there anything within that contract that really gives a breather to a user?
Thank you so much, Timothy, for that question. I mean, we must appreciate one thing. The road network in Kampala has not changed much for the last, let me say, 10 to 15 years. However, the population of vehicles has increased drastically. So there's a lot of pressure on the roads regarding the need for more roads and higher capacity roads. Now, in the contract, what we embedded in the contract was the contractors have to work at night to reduce the inconvenience to the public and also the inconvenience to economic activities in the city during the day. Now, our contractors have not yet kicked up that scale of activity to begin working at full scale at night. That's why you see there is a lot of inconvenience during the day. Now, why is it the case? It's because they're doing the preliminary activities, relocation of utilities, preparing the road bed. Those activities cannot be done safely at night because you need lighting, a lot of lighting, to be able to discover the underground cables, utilities and all. So once the relocation is done and the road bed is prepared, then a lot of night activity will come about and there will be a reduction in the burden and inconvenience to the public.
Let's talk about potholes and something that Professor talked about, the one of Kubiri there. We're about to start a fishing activity, but before we get to fishing, this shaping of potholes, if you want your children to learn shapes, take them to our roads. But this shaping of potholes and resurfacing them, doesn't that cause the tenure of this road to even be shorter? Because the areas that you see that they resurface, the pothole comes back, even the road's tenure of life, 10, 15 years, is already past it.
As I said, a new road, on the average for 10 years, you won't see a pothole. A new road requires little or no maintenance. The roads we have outlived their service lives. They are roads that are due for rehabilitation or reconstruction. So even the patching we're doing is not work we should be doing. We should be reconstructing them. However, as the minister said, and I don't want to contradict him, we have a limited budget. If you cannot afford to have bread, how can you ask for cake? If we can't afford to reconstruct these roads, let's tolerate the patching we are doing. Because the patching is intended to give much less inconvenience to the road users. That's what we can afford. So sometimes I get incensed when we demand all the patches, everything. The life of a pothole, and I'd like to be very clear, is about 1 to 2 rainy seasons. it's money being thrown away. The ideal intervention is to revamp that road, reconstruct it, redeem it. You can't afford, pothole patching is very expensive. In fact, being poor is a very expensive undertaking. So, I just because we don't want to speak candidly about these things, but the truth is, our roads require a total overhaul. Now, what we're doing is reduce the pain to the public as we mobilize resources to revamp these roads.
Before I get to Professor, let's talk about drainage. The water. The water, especially streaming through the city, water will always find its way. Whether it is destroying homes or anything, it will show you where it's supposed to be passing. How do we mitigate drainage in this city to relieve people seeing other people's saucepans passing by them? The other thing I wanted to ask, what is the process of Maram collection? Because there are hills that are causing this water to become, some areas become catchment areas because Maram is being removed from some area as a catchment area and coming down to a certain area. What is the process there?
I'll begin with the issue of drainage, and I think I've tried to address it. If we don't change behavior by putting pressure on our wetlands, building in right on top of waterways, stormwater drains, the problem of drainage, of flooding will not go away. And I think I recall in one of our management meetings, we're talking about how do we solve this flooding in the city. I said, until we recover the wetlands, until you find somebody building, turning, water moves in a straight line and along a gradient. You find somebody builds right in front of a drain, it has to take a right turn and probably even moving up the slope.
And build as KCC is watching.
It's not as KCC. Some of these issues are historical. This construction didn't happen in the last 2 or 3 years.
No.
These are things that happened 5-10 years ago. Now, industrial area roads, all the drains, the stormwater drains have been built upon. That's why you see that industrial area is always underwater. There's nowhere for the water to go. Now, where does that take us? Our own behavior in not protecting the environment, disrupting the natural flow of water, and of course we also bring politics into this. Now you see we are taking people who are illegally trading, having illegal markets on the streets. We're taking them off, and what they do while they're trading there, they are littering garbage, destroying the drainage infrastructure. Now while we're doing this, we are criticized. When we try to get people out of wetlands, we are criticized, but we need to get them out. We're not going to cure that problem of flooding by building new drains. It is not practically impossible.
Maybe Timothy, to also push this problem back to every citizen. It's true that when we construct our homes, we also pave compounds, and we have to drive away that water. And when we drive it to roads, we've made them very hydraulically efficient. Where we did not experience floods, we now experience floods. For example, the flood of Bwaise. Before Murago and Makerere and Kawempe and Chisas were fully constructed, whenever it rained, the water of Makerere would come first, it passes, then Kawempe, then lastly, Chisas. And there wouldn't be flooding. But right now, because we've made our structures hydraulically efficient, every drop that falls on all these hills will all come together at the same time, like releasing children in a classroom, all of them to go out through one door at the same time. And so that is what is causing the infrastructure, the drainage infrastructure, to be overwhelmed also. And we need to have a comprehensive plan. Drainage plan. Maybe we need to work, KCCA needs to work with National Water and Ministry of Water and Environment and have a comprehensive plan of how people can detain water. Either it is released slowly later, or it is reused, so that we do not overwhelm our drainage systems. I think it's not just about, yes, people have constructed in wetlands, but everyone who has constructed in Kampala is actually contributing drainage water. And it has a consequence, a future consequence, by the way, because this water is the one that was penetrating into the ground.
Yes.
It was recharging the groundwater. So after 30, 40 years, we'll start seeing our boreholes drying up.
Very interesting there. Professor, even as we as we draw to a close, you know, the traffic jam, the inconveniences there, I also feel an element of sensitization for people to begin to appreciate this. How do we get the community, or how do we get the citizens on board with the different projects, both by UNRWA, by KCCA, especially in these engagements, but also even with NAM and G77 coming on? How do we get together and pull in the same direction?
Thanks a lot, Timothy. But before I answer that, thanks for that question. But before I answer it, I wanted to respond to what Minister Cholo said about how science cannot predict natural disasters. Some natural disasters.
With precision.
With precision. And that is true if you only use science. But prediction is not based on science. It is also based on history. Okay? So the science gives us particular laws, and we explain how nature works. For example, if there is a slope, you know that things are going to follow that direction. That's very scientific. What history does, it gives you data over a long period of time to enable you to predict particular trends, particular patterns, based on which you can make informed guesses. I've said this before, but I don't think it is, I mean, all these things that we are seeing, whether Katonga, whether whatever, it's not that they could not have been predicted. And why am I saying this? These water bodies have a history. They have particular behaviors. There's no water body in the world which doesn't have a behavior. That's why people can tell us El Nino occurs in a cycle of 6 months. And while as scientists we have not been documenting information, the communities around, I know we are a younger country, so most of our old people maybe have died off. But if we had documented this data, we would have it even when they have died off. I think the challenge to us is to begin documenting. I don't know whether it will be Ministry of Water, or it will be NEMA, or it will be museums. That's why, like in Japan, they have a whole museum for tsunamis. Because you can't know when an eruption is going to occur in the water so as to create a tsunami of this level. But at least there is a person observing in the tsunami observatory and the tsunami museums. They observe the behavior of natural disasters. It's true we cannot predict them with precision, but we can make attempts at being intentional at collecting data. If you went to Soroti, you'll get people, if you find old people there, they'll tell you how that Awaja River bridge, before you even put the bridge, how it behaves. I can give an example, like if you go to the folk tales in Bugisu about landslides, the historical thing used to be a particular kind of goat which would come and trot on the mountain, and if it trotted in a particular way, it created a landslide. But the trotting used to be like 25-year cycles, okay? Right now you're having them more frequently. So as a minister of whether disaster or whatever, then you can tell why are they more frequent? Because they were there in folk tales before. It's because behavior has changed. People have encroached. They tell them the landslide will come back with you. They say for us we have to be here. So you can predict certain behaviors and patterns. Cannot be precise, but time periods you can tell. And I think we need to begin doing that, given that our water bodies are giving us surprises every other time. We need to be intentional and sacrifice. Just like also droughts, particularly like for our people who have cattle and whatever, some of these things, the Karamoja winds, which are like Hamatans now blowing in the east, in the past they would come and stop around Sironko. Right now they will go all the way to Bukedeya, they will go all the way to Kamonkoli. Because, what the reason? People have cut down trees. So when the soil, the winds come, they carry everything. They carry polythene bags, they carry trees, they carry, if you're outside actually they can even carry you off. So let us take history seriously. Let us document these things and be careful and serious about record keeping. Not just when a certain minister goes, we don't know where that document went. When Engineer Luimbazi leaves, we don't know what happened about Lubigi. So I think we need to have a record keeping system. But now to go back to communities and how to sensitize and first of all, I think as communities, there's need to appreciate that these projects cost money. And they are costing our money. They are not simply government projects on which to vent when we are annoyed. But also someone here said there is an unhealthy relationship between the communities, the people, and government projects. One is the source of inconvenience because they last forever. Two, they come with movement or displacement. And when they come with displacement, the management of the displacement is conducted as if people don't matter. Of course, we've been trained in development that development is people blind. It has no feelings. So that's what the textbooks say. So development has no feelings. But you see, because it has no feelings and people have feelings, then they have a problem. Number three, each time there is a big event, it's like, as in the home, you know, in our traditional homes, when visitors were coming, children who were not smartly dressed were told not to turn up. And if you're a stepchild, you actually didn't turn up. So when development occurs, the people who have been living their lives have to be pushed away. They should not be seen. There will be deployment to keep them away. I think we can turn this around. We should learn to make people part of development, to know that these are their events and they can participate in them in good ways. The other day we were here talking about AFCON. We would want people to support AFCON. Now we are going to have these guests. Of course, we don't want our guests to be made insecure. We don't want crowding around them for bad people to do bad acts. But for those who are going to stay longer and engage in tourism, can our people benefit from it?
Yes, true.
If people have to be moved, people will appreciate if you talk to them and say, guys, we are going to do this, that it is not just being backed at and ordered. This is one of, by the colonial inheritances we have, that people do not matter, that they're simply backed at. And this goes to the people who do, I know UNRWA takes a very long process engaging the communities before it passes. There is a man in Mubende who refused to move his house and a banana plantation, and UNRWA took years. I hope now you've managed to engage him and move. But I think beyond UNRWA, they should also, I think maybe KCC also needs to hire people who actually engage the community. To tell them this thing is coming, it is our thing. And I know, Engineer Ruimbas, the city has certain problems in terms of behavior. But if you have a problematic child, you have to be a little bit also more patient. Otherwise, the alternative is to kill the child. But if you don't want to kill the child, then find a way of engaging. If the UNRWA child is more well behaved, that one they are lucky. But the city has different dynamics. So I think handling people all the time with iron fists is a problem.
Okay.
So let's make development and the people speak to each other. Not just that development is people blind. Let it have eyes.
Before I give you all parting shots, let me first read some feedback because you could have responses. I congratulate the professor upon hinting on Ugandans and most importantly, how our moral fiber which has eroded. Roads in Uganda are more expensive compared to our neighbors. Contractors in Uganda must plow back to their awarded fund, and the higher authorities should try as much as possible to get things done. Therefore, poor work, let's wake up as a country, okay? Someone else says, thank you, Timothy, for the show. This is Onen Godfrey, following you from Mbuya. I must say that there are 3 areas as far as infrastructure is concerned. You cannot have corrupt people. One needs to pay attention to education, health, roads. Let's borrow a leaf from the neighbors in Rwanda and Kenya. Okay, let me move on there. Someone says, I like the reasoning of the minister. With all the experience you have on about roads, how genuine are the engineers? Where and who is training them? I remember hearing you quarreling with an engineer in Amuria district who had failed to fix a bridge, only to hear that the so-called engineer is a diploma holder. This is Ben Patrick, okay? The last ones here. 15 years of the ministry, and what do you think about others? The high level of corruption in UNRWA right now, even with employment and procurement. Okay? Timothy, this is a lengthy one from Wilbrod. He says roads have failed due to the following: poor drainage system, poor material, traffic investigations, lack of serious supervision, contractors, lack of creativity, testing layers of material, the only lab testing equipment instead of combining them, original methods of driving heavy loaded trucks, okay? 100 million stretched before undertaking a project. Timothy, the only way to reduce on the road cost is to empower the indigenous contractors. Julius Isingoma comes in and says, the minister has intended to do everything on the roads, I think he should become the Minister of Kampala with full powers to see what happens there. Finally, my question is the KCC drainage building the roads. Stop using it as a scapegoat. It is a historical challenge. Why don't you change the narrative there? Okay. I'll start with Professor and we'll go all the way there. 2 minutes of your parting shots. Professor, Engineer Luimbazi, Dr. Apollo, Engineer Chizito, and finally the Honorable Minister.
Thank you very much, Timothy. First and foremost, I would like to say history matters, and I'm happy that Dr. Apollo Buregeya started by giving us a book, and the first chapter in that book is the history of construction. He has narrated it all the way from colonialism and when do we start putting up big things and why and with what consequences. Okay, then that is one. So history of things matters, history of our construction matters. Maybe sometimes we may need to change. But also another thing, I think as we part, modernization of the mind is very important. The moral fiber is very important. Everyone has decried this, but it's high time everyone did something about it. I know every family has a responsibility, but I also know that everyone's problem is no one's problem. Everybody's problem is no one's problem, so no one takes responsibility. So I take it back to government and the government-mandated agencies. One of the government-mandated agencies is the Ministry of National Guidance, and that is when we are adults. But largely, it is a task we should be able to take back to the National Curriculum Development Center, because that deals with our education from kindergarten up to pre-university, that is up to pre-tertiary. And the formative years are 0 to 8 years. So if children can be taught at that level to return, we are intentional about returning moral fiber, things like patriotism, things like ideology, things like loving your government, don't destroy things just because you have the energy to destroy them. Value costs of things. I think the NCDC should be able to help us in that. I think that would be my parting shot. If it could do that, and we have better people, then Engineer Luimbazi and the group will have less problems. But otherwise, pursuing engineering without pursuing the behavioral side of things, we are wasting time.
Yes, true.
Over to Engineer Luimbazi.
Thank you, Timothy, and thank you, viewers, for taking time to listen to us today. All I want to say is one thing, which is maybe going to be my parting shot. KCC alone and the government cannot solve all the problems of Kampala. There's a lot more the public can do to reduce the burden government carries in trying to correct man-made problems. So I would advise that we need to bring our hands together. As Timothy was saying, or trying to allude to, I'm not trying to throw the blame game around, but I'm sure all of us can pull together to make sure we have a livable and attractive city, which we can all enjoy. Now, coming to the issue of unit costs, which I want to attend to. Government always advertises these works publicly, where everyone can participate. Anybody who's eligible to partake of the works. And we always pick the lowest responsive bidder. So if the public feels that the bidders who can do the work cheaper, please ensure they participate. This will take away the argument that costs are inflated by a particular entity. I want to thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Dr. Apollo.
Thank you, Timothy, and thank you, viewers, for the time. I want to say that, of course, we've talked about potholes, and every pothole has a story. Each pothole is very unique, and it's very hard to point fingers at anybody. So I'll point fingers at all of us. The first cause of potholes is likely because the roads have aged. And if the roads have aged, have served their lifetime, 10 to 15 years, then the planners are to blame for not planning in advance to make sure that the potholes are fixed. But also, too, probably it's because of a failure in the drainage system. And that means then we blame the people who use plastics irresponsibly, people who are opening up construction sites and dumping construction waste in wetlands, on roads, blocking drainage systems, And those are us, people, our cousins, our uncles, our sisters and brothers, Ugandans, who may not directly relate their activities to the potholes on the road, but also poverty. I want to push Ugandans that we need to know that tall trees are found in a forest, that for us to be a prosperous nation, for us to be wealthy, each one of us must put in their best to make sure that we're all wealthy. And therefore, that means then we pay taxes, and government will have more money to fund infrastructure and plan better and plan more boldly. I talked about the railway system. Probably UNRA and KCCA and Ministry of Works know all these. And probably they have them, but they have shelved them because they know the budgets. Like Honorable Minister has illustrated that it's like a polygamous man with so many But finally, I want to emphasize the importance of understanding that policies, standards, and forms of contracts that should apply locally are not supposed to be inherited blindly from Europe, because the motivation for commerce in Europe is different from the motivation for commerce here. So, for example, here we need to see, I want to disagree slightly with my senior about the lowest evaluated bidder. When you have a structure, a standard, a form of contract that is going to isolate you technically before you even reach the lowest evaluated bidder, I think we need to look at how we have structured our forms of contract and enable local industry development. Separate the bones from the meat. Let suppliers, instead of having one contractor, main contractor, have a segment of contractors. A contractor that supplies cement, a contractor that supplies, and that is Bubu, local supplier, so that you make sure that the projects you sign off, the contracts you sign off, are directly benefiting local industry development. That's how we change our economy, that's how we become rich, and that's how we can afford infrastructure that we are failing to afford now.
Thank you, Dr. Apollo. Engineer Chizito.
Thank you, Timothy. I'd like to speak about the someone who mentioned the panic and you know, we start things last minute, doing things last minute. UNRWA's responsibility is to make sure that we have people who arrive in the country are able to get to all the cities easily, intercity and national movement to ease that. NAM is international, and it's been known, I think every 2 years they choose the next country that is hosting. But what I want to say is that if in those 2 years this is what has been the plan, the projects that UNRWA is implementing we didn't commence implementation a year ago or even these last few months. They've been ongoing for a while. The flyover at Queensway has been a project that has been going on ever since. I think most of them have been since 2020 or even earlier. Kampala Northern Bypass, that contract has been ongoing for a while. And the improvement on the Spur to Munyonyo, that contract was awarded way before. So it is indeed affecting our works. In fact, on our side, it has been a disruption because we've had to tell the contractors to actually get off in the season when the visitors will be here, and then they'll continue with the rest of the works that are interfering with the movement when they do go. Timothy, one thing that I wanted to tackle is also the fact that we're going into a Christmas season. December is upon us, and we have the rains, and people are going to be traveling on these roads for the next couple of weeks until January. It's a very dangerous season for people to be on the road. Therefore, everyone's responsibility is to make sure that they travel safely and arrive their destinations safely. We've been issuing a number of caution messages and information to advise drivers and pedestrians and everyone who is using national roads to make sure they they get their journey planned earlier, know where you're going and how safe it is. We've seen some attempts of drivers trying to cross where these water has overtopped roads and some bridges, and they're attempting to take risky maneuvers across these roads. So we really encourage our drivers and even the passengers to make sure that before they make that journey and during the time when they're making the journeys, they've assessed the risk and they are in a safe, they're making safe journeys, arriving safely where they going.
Thank you very much, even for the advisor. Lastly, Honorable Minister.
Mine lastly is first to thank you for bringing these brains and giving me the privilege to interact with them. Professor Sally has brought in something that I hope my colleagues from disaster management, as they update their disaster plan, the factoring in of indigenous knowledge. There was this earthquake in Indonesia, Timothy, and an old man is believed to have saved many lives. How he was able to see some creatures underground beginning to run out like rats, and he warned the people to retreat and an earthquake to get out of buildings. So indigenous knowledge, in my opinion, and it's reinforced by the professor now, is very critical. So my teams, my friends who are updating their disaster plan and management plan for the country should factor in this thing. I agree with you entirely. As for Kampala capital city, first of all, the countryside will do whatever it takes, will continue. We have gone slow on new projects, Timothy, but we are going to complete those that are ongoing. A few might come on board, but the country must know that we will finish our commitments. We will walk them up to the end. For the Kampala capital city management, I'm happy with the engineer Lumbas and his team. The truth is that is the face of the country. The situation right now is bad, but it's not hopeless. Kampala capital city cannot be allowed to become a hopeless case because it is our home, it is our face. We are going to build Kampala roads back better, and the only things that we will put also systems in place that will factor in the maintenance, because even when we finish these beautiful roads, like now Port Bell up to Luzira, here through my office, we must put in place systems immediately that will start maintaining them as quickly, as immediately as we conclude the construction. Once again, UBC, I want to thank you for this opportunity. The country is building a lot of confidence back on UBC also. And for me, if I get the opportunity in cabinet to speak for you, to reinforce my Minister of Information, I will be very happy to do that. All I want is, I hope you have also made Soroti to be on there so that the test of people pick you. Because they have a big stake. Sometimes you people black me out and my Karimojong people. So I want UBC felt in Karenga, I want UBC felt in Kisoro, I want UBC in Ibundubujo. I hope that is happening now, but we want to thank you for according us the opportunity to interface with the citizens.
Thank you very much. I want to thank the gentleman on the panel and the lady for coming through to discuss such pertinent issues, and also the team that is in the production that has been able to make today happen, including my producer. We'll end it this way. It's not the load that breaks you, it's the way you carry it. Good morning.
UBC, inspiring Uganda.
The family of Mr. Samuel Chigundu with deep sorrow announces the passing of their beloved wife, mother and grandmother, Mrs. Mebo Chigundu, which occurred on Sunday, 19th November 2023 in Hyderabad, India. A vigil will be held at the Chigundu residence on Mutungo Hill on Friday, 24th November 2023, starting at 7 p.m. A church service will be held at Watoto Church Central, Buganda Road on Saturday, 25th November 2023 at 11 a.m. Burial will take place at Rensha Kububari Kashari on Monday, 27th November at 10 a.m. May her soul rest in eternal peace.
This week on UBC.
This is Kakene campsite. Is one of the most beautiful campsite we have here in Kidepo, with 360-degree view of the park, and one can enjoy the beautiful sunrise and the beautiful sundown here right at Kakene campsite.
Avoca Kidepo is special. You see, we are just 5 meters from a buffalo. You see the buffalo? Nowhere else on earth you can get that. But this is Kidepo. And also, as you can see, the valleys are very good. It is facing even mountains, and even those ones you can see in South Sudan. You're seeing those mountains in South Sudan. And you can see this one from the east and the west.
Uganda Revenue Authority is proud to announce the Taxpayers Appreciation Awards, where URA will recognize and reward the most compliant taxpayers of the year. This event will be held tomorrow, Thursday, November 23rd, 2023, at URA headquarters in Nakawa. Who will scoop the top prize? Catch the proceedings live on URA TV and UBC TV as we salute some of the men and women who are building Uganda. Uganda Revenue Authority, developing Uganda together.